Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 30th annual resource breakfast. Appreciate everybody coming out. I think you're going to enjoy what we're covering today. We're going to cover a lot of material, but the speakers will be around afterwards if you have questions, and of course you can reach out to us at any time. Today would not be possible without the support of some of our partners, Goldman Sachs, Thornburg, Fidelity, Vanguard, and of course American Century, who is bringing us Brett Conlon, one of our two keynote speakers. It really is an honor to speak to you today after 36 years of doing this. The milestone's not something that our team takes lightly because it really represents decades of trust, relationships, and shared journeys, which we're grateful to each and every one of you. Now, some of you have heard me tell this story. As you know, my daughter is really not afraid of much of anything. But when we were younger, we were hiking up by northern Lake Superior, and we came to this bridge that looked a little bit rickety, and she looked a little bit concerned about it. And I held out my hand and I said, you can hold my hand. It'll be okay. And she said, no, I want you to hold my hand. I said, isn't that kind of the same thing? She said, no, because if I hold your hand, I might get scared and let go. But if you're holding my hand, I know you're not going to let go of me. And that's really stayed with me for decades, because I think that's why we're here, to help people, at least figuratively, hold their hand. The world can certainly feel uncertain, complex, noisy, and our role is not just to give advice or manage money. It's truly to provide confidence and hold your hand when things get a little bit shaky. Today, it's easy to believe, the world's falling apart. You turn on the news, you scroll through social media, you listen to the loudest voices in the room, and you think everything used to be so much better back then. But this morning, I want to challenge that a little bit, not with blind optimism and not with wishful thinking, but a little bit of perspective and facts. Because when you step back from the noise and you look at the data, something remarkable becomes clear. And that is, by many of the most important measures in human history, this may really be the best time ever to be alive, both as people and also financially. So let's start with something very basic, which is safety. In the 1970s, property crime in the United States was twice as high as it is today. In 1970, there were 3,600 property crimes per 100,000 people, according to the FBI. Today, it's 2,000. Violent crime rose sharply after the 70s. You got into the 80s and 90s, the cocaine wars. But today, homicide rates are roughly 50% less than what they were at their peak, according to the FBI. So it doesn't mean crime doesn't exist, because it does. But statistically, your odds of being a victim are lower today than they were in the good old days. Let's talk about something even more fundamental, life itself. In 1970, life expectancy on average was 71 years. Today it's 78 years. That's a huge difference. It's 10% longer. And one of the most profound improvements, something most of us don't think about, is infant mortality. In 1970, the infant mortality rate in the United States was 20 out of 1,000 babies. 2 out of every 100 babies died in their first year. Today, it's 70% less than that. It's 5.5 per 1,000. And again, that's not abstract progress. I mean, it's true. human progress measured, in true outcomes. Finally, today, the age-adjusted death rates from heart disease have fallen by about 60%. And in fact, the chance of dying from a heart attack has declined 90%. That's a massive difference. If we zoom out to the rest of the world, extreme poverty has generally been the norm. In 1970, 60% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. Today, it's 10%. That's a huge, huge difference. Now, progress isn't perfect, it's not even, and certainly it's not finished, but the progress is real. And finally, there's technology, the thing that's shaping everything. In the 70s and 80s, information moved very, very slowly. I mean, you guys remember 3 TV stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then a bunch of ones that didn't really work. You needed at least in my house, you needed the pliers to turn the thing. Today, 5.5 billion people are connected to the internet. In the United States alone, 96% of the adult population uses the internet daily. 96%. I mean, you're carrying more computing power in your pocket than most buildings had, than the first lunar landing had. And while the power can be misused, and we're going to talk about cybersecurity, because after all, that's why we're here today, it's also something that can be used to connect, build, learn. And if you look at the rate of adoption, ChatGPT, when it came out, had 1 million users within the first 5 days of its release. That's phenomenal. The other thing is people don't even realize they're using AI. 60% of mobile phone users are using AI at least once a day. If you're using voice to text, you're using AI. If you're using search like Siri, you're using AI or Google. The other thing about that is, in the next 4 years, by 2030, AI alone is expected to add 21% to our GDP, a 21% net increase into productivity. That's something that's generally not captured in the notes or the news. So if we look at where we are today financially, I would suggest it's one of the best times in history. Inflation, it's about 3%. Now that doesn't mean prices are dropping, but they're not going up. Interest rates, very low. Unemployment's at basically 4%, which is full employment for the United States. Corporate earnings were up 17% last year overall. GDP continues to grow. And in the last, at least through September of last year, tariffs brought in $180 billion with virtually no impact on inflation. Everyone was freaked out about tariffs last year. It's been an incredibly good thing. So let me be clear. It's not a claim that everything's perfect. It's not a denial of inequality or mental health challenges or political divisiveness. But if we look at, the good old days, we're certainly safer than we were. We're living longer. More children are surviving. And we have more knowledge available than we've ever had before. And so, while it may be the best time to be alive, it's certainly not easy. It's confusing. And that's why we're truly honored to walk the so-called metaphorical bridge with you. Now, while we provide wealth management, financial planning, tax planning, what really drives us, and those are just a means to an end, is helping people live the best life they can. And so why sit here kind of reflecting on the 36-year journey? I certainly have a sense of gratitude to all of you, but also a sense of excitement about what's ahead, because our history shows that I think the greatest things that we're going to be able to do, both professionally, personally, and as an organization, are certainly not behind us, but they're in front of us. And planning matters. It matters for you and your family, but it matters just as much for our firm. Now, 3 people asked me this today. I do not plan on retiring, ever. Probably die at my desk, which I've tried to do twice. But it's important to have a plan. We've had a written succession plan in place for more than a decade in our office. We've had contingency plans for natural disasters and things we don't know, because we don't know what we don't know. We don't expect disruption, but we're certainly prepared for it. And when you hear from Jason, you're going to hear about some of the measures that Raymond James and we take to protect you. Unlike other firms that are scaling back, they're using technology to replace people, we continue to expand our team and try to bring in bright, young, talented advisors and team members to continue what we're doing. And this multi-generational approach ensures the same service you've come to expect will be here for you, your children, your grandchildren, hopefully their children. In 2026, we plan on hiring at least 2 people. Another advisor will be starting mid-year, and some more assistants. The other thing about 2025, which was incredible, was January 1st of 25 was a milestone event as Raj, Dan, Nick, Keel, and Bobby became equity partners in the firm, making not just financial investment, but a personal one. And again, it recognizes their outstanding contributions and reflects our collective commitment to the future. So, to all of you, I want to thank you for being part of the journey. I think we've built something special, but we're really just at the beginning. Now, some of you remember the old office here on the bottom right when we started. A lot's changed since then. You know, the internet didn't exist, cell phones didn't exist, postage was about 10 cents a stamp. But the biggest risks that people face remain the same. One, making bad decisions, mainly because of misperception or bad information, which is why we have events like today with speakers so you can be informed. And then 2 is inflation. We truly believe inflation is the biggest risk most people face. The fact that $1 tomorrow is not going to buy what $1 today does. And I've asked this question for 30 years. It's as true today as before. But how many of you paid more for the last vehicle you bought than the first house? That's inflation. That's why things cost more. And it's no wonder. I mean, the media doesn't inform. Their role is not to educate. Their role is to sell. And so when we're operating on misleading or incorrect facts, it's very difficult to make good decisions. And the media has grown to more than 200 million websites, 1,700 commercial TV stations versus the 3 when we started, and thousands of magazines competing for your attention. So we, at this point, want to help educate all of you. Now, the vision of our firm has always been to make lives better, our clients, our team, and our community. In 2022, we looked at the community and started something called the New Beginning Initiative. As you guys know, because you've supported food drives for 30 years, there's a lot of food challenge in Lake County. And we finally looked at it and said, you know what? At best, we're treating the symptom, and at worst, we're enabling people. We need to get to the root of the problem. And the problem was people wanted to work, in a lot of cases couldn't. Now, there's certainly people that have mental health challenges. They're not going to work. There's people that want to game the system, that are lazy, that don't want to work. We wanted to focus on those people that wanted to actually work. And in some cases, it didn't make sense to work, because if they did, they'd make a little bit of money and lose their benefits. The biggest challenges we found, having spoken to all the nonprofits in the county, one, transportation. I can't get to the job. I don't have a vehicle, or I can't get there. Big one was childcare. It's just too expensive. It doesn't make sense for me to work, so I'm not going to make enough to pay for childcare. So we started the New Beginning Initiative with the idea that we would support people that wanted to help themselves. In the last 3 years, we've helped close to 200 families. In the last year, over 100 families. And in most cases, it's something very, very simple. And my goal is that we can eliminate hunger and homelessness in Lake County for anybody that wants to work. Matching up jobs, giving the training, and then providing funds for daycare, for transportation, and for housing, which is expensive. And they sent me this quick thing that a family of 4 moved up from Florida. They start to fall behind on their bills because if the wife was working, the kids, who were very young, couldn't stay at home by themselves. They couldn't afford childcare. And they made too much to qualify for any of the county programs. And by too much, it's about $14,000 a year, and you're disqualified. It's not much. So they came to the New Beginning Initiative. We covered 3 months of childcare, which was not that expensive. They managed to get ahead on their bills, get a new place to live, and now they're fine. And so with literally about $6,000, we were able to prevent somebody from getting on welfare. It doesn't take much. So our vision is to continue to grow that. I want to thank you guys for it, because I think it's important. Now, while a lot of firms continue to use technology to replace people, we're using it to support our staff. A lot of people say, do you use AI to manage portfolios? We do not use AI to make investment decisions. They're all human-driven. We do use technology to monitor and look at allocations for all of our clients constantly. We use technology to keep track of things like tax planning, estate planning, et cetera, but we do not use it to replace people. Now, we're approaching another midterm election. It's not going to be a crisis. It's not going to be a catastrophe, but we fully expect a lot more volatility this year. Midterm election years typically have more volatility. In 2022, we dropped about 18%. In 2018, we dropped about 4%. However, 2014, things were up. 2010, things were up. So periods of volatility are a good thing for us. We can use them to create tax write-offs. We can use them to reallocate portfolios, and we can use them to move money from tax-deferred to tax-free. And we certainly don't have a crystal ball. I mean, nobody does. But midterm election years are rarely quiet. Some bring negative results. And again, I would say it doesn't matter. It's one of the reasons it's important to communicate as you do your planning meetings, how much cash do you think you're going to need? Because we typically keep about a year's worth of cash. We generate income based on your needs. And by the way, while a lot of firms using models and kind of a cookie cutter approach, every one of your portfolios and your planning is based on you and nobody else, which is why we have a team of 28 people, soon to be 30. Again, we're going to use the volatility. I think it's a good thing. I do expect to see more of it. The media is going to lose its mind when things drop. The things that we should not do react to the headlines. Don't try to time the markets. And don't abandon your long-term strategy. And by the way, it doesn't really matter who wins. Whether Democrats win, Republicans win. As far as the markets go, it's agnostic. It's once we have certainty, things will smooth out. So the bottom line is midterms bring uncertainty. Uncertainty brings volatility, and volatility brings opportunity. And of course, opportunity requires discipline. But our entire team is ready. If you have some dramatic change, you think you need some huge amount of money this year, just let us know, and we can plan for that. On average, the markets drop 5% every couple months. They drop 10% every 8 months. 10% drop today, be about 4,700 points on the Dow. If you woke up and the Dow dropped 4,700 points tomorrow, the media would lose their minds. It's a normal dip. It's nothing unusual. And you get a 20% dip about every 30 months. As Warren Buffett said, the four most dangerous words for investors are this time it's different, because it's never different. One of the things you're going to hear a lot about this year is the economy and the deficit. You have the big monster, the black hole, the new economy. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Oh, but by the way, these covers, 1983, 43 years ago. Nothing's different. People are talking about the same thing over and over, and I can guarantee you they'll be talking about it this year. We take a very intentional approach. We certainly don't believe in trying to time markets because it just doesn't work. Buy and hold, quite frankly, is better than timing, but it's not the answer. The answer is to proactively rebalance to take advantage of what's happening. Not to try to time the markets, but to take a very intentional approach to balancing what you're doing. Now, in 1990, I partnered with Raymond James. It's hard to believe it's been going on 36 years now. Raymond James has about 8,900 advisors overall. They're managing $1.7, almost $2 trillion today with a T. They have 2 times the required capital of regulators. They've also had 151 or 52 consecutive quarters of profitability. They're a very stable firm. And they do a lot of things other firms do not do. They're the only Wall Street firm that has a written guarantee that if you're hacked through no fault of your own, they will make you whole. And you can see that in your handout materials. If you didn't grab the handouts, I'd encourage you to do so. They also have all the statistics I gave you a few minutes ago. Our relationship is great. We are totally independent, so we're not beholden to do anything. We can look for the best things for you. But we have the privilege to utilize their trust company, their bank, and all other resources, thousands of professionals, and we do. There's a lot of resources, we call this the resource breakfast, people may not be aware of. Everything from helping you appeal your property tax, we have an attorney for that. Specialized lending, lines of credit. We did more mortgages this year than we've ever done. Discounted third-party services on everything from Medicare supplements to concierge healthcare. We have access to concierge medicine for you. We have access to private aviation. We had a client this year, older couple, were doing a river trip, and the husband became, ill to the point of being life-threatening. They put him off the boat in Iowa, in Iowa. And they called and said, listen, we're trying to come home. My 94-year-old husband is going to have to drive an hour to the airport. Then we're going to fly to Chicago. Then we're going to change planes. Then we're going to come to Cleveland. Then we got to drive to Concord. can you help us get to the airport? Well, it's like, why don't we just charter a plane for you? It's not going to cost that much money, and it's going to make life a lot easier. So we reached out to one of our contacts. They were able to land about 14 minutes from the hospital. They were home in an hour. They landed at Cuyahoga County, close to home, and it was just a lot less stress. Medicare long-term care planning, certainly travel planning. So you know I love the trips. And tax planning. If you've not signed up for the tax status that we spoke about, I'd encourage you to do so. I know we've sent the link out several times. This will help us monitor your tax situation. It'll help us find any discrepancies in your return. If there's any type of audit threat, we'll know about 6 months before, and it'll help us with some advanced planning strategies. The other resource, I'd encourage you to look on our website. From the videos, the how-to stuff on investor access, all of our upcoming events, etc. We have something new called Carver University. You can learn. Again, I'd encourage you to just surf around. The biggest and most important asset, of course, is our team. Again, if you have questions, concerns, needs, just reach out. Everybody is there to help you. And certainly for things that are administrative, you don't need to speak to your advisor. Every one of our team members is empowered to send out funds if you need them, to find a check, to answer a question. Where's my statement? How do I get 1099? How do I sign up for the trip? You don't have to chase your advisor necessarily. Coming up in 2026, we're planning 22 events. The next bigger event will be Chris DeSantis. If you guys didn't hear him 2 years ago, great event to bring kids to. He wrote a book called Why I Find You Irritating, Generational Friction at Work. And he talks about why different generations may not communicate. Phenomenal presentation to come to with kids or grandkids so they understand you and you understand them. We are going to do at least 3, probably 5 trips. January, actually next Wednesday, we're going to the Turks and Caicos. Unfortunately, it's sold out. But we're doing Alaska in June. But in 2027, we have 2 phenomenal trips planned. And something happened that I've never seen. We've done over 70 trips. Over 30 years, I've never seen this. We announced these trips on Tuesday, and the second one is virtually sold out. We have 14 spots left. If you met Trish, she was out front on the left, and we have some flyers on these. The first trip we're doing in January of 2027, which sounds like forever, but it's 11 months. It's a boutique resort in Mexico, 72 rooms, 5-star, all-inclusive, 6 days for 2 people. Got to do the math. It's about $8,500 all in. And that's everything from tips, food, booze, airport transfers, Wi-Fi, etc. The second trip, and there's a picture up there, is a yacht trip to the Greek Isles. It's a 10-day trip from Athens through the Isles, Turkey, and then back. If you have any interest, carverclienttrip.com, call the office, or you can reach out to Trish, and you'll see her all over the stuff, or grab a flyer. We're also doing the Carver Escapes. You guys had the idea, these little overnight trips. Great idea. This year we did Girls' Night Out. We did a trip to Frankenmuth. The next one is in May. We're doing a overnight to Detroit. So it's brunch at a kind of a classic Detroit Coney Island place. We're going to the MGM Casino. And remember, it's not gambling if you win. People have the option to go to Greenfield Village. They can do the People Mover. The next day we're doing brunch and coming back. Really fun thing. Always a great group of people. If you're interested, you can sign up or just give the office a call. And then if you have ideas for these escapes, let us know. We'd love to hear from you as far as that goes. So, with all of that, today we're very fortunate to have two speakers talk about something that's very, very important. First, and some of you may have heard Jason Mayor before. He's been kind enough to come up 2 times in the past. Jason's a seasoned cybersecurity and risk management leader. He's got about 20 years experience. Prior to working in financial services, he began his career as a cyber operations officer in the United States Air Force, where he led network operations, cyber defense, and information assurance teams. He serves as Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Raymond James Financial and the Chief Information Security Officer for Raymond James Banking. Our first speaker is Brett Conlon, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at American Century Investments. Brett is really in charge of the company's information security strategy, creating initiatives in business resiliency, and also pioneering some emerging techniques. Before joining American Century, Brett was at the FBI, and there he led initiatives that were really crucial on a national level, focused on combating cyber threats and enhancing digital intelligence. So with that, I'd like to bring up Brett. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I don't know if I'm too close to the speaker, so I'll make sure that I do this. All right, so again, my name is Brett Conlon. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at American Century Investments. And I live in Naples, Florida. So there's very few things that are going to get me out of Florida in the middle of January, and this is probably about the only thing that will do that. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. It's very important, and my hope here is to really take a lot of information, a lot of things that you hear about, and really distill it down so that you don't feel overwhelmed, but that you really understand what you're facing and how we're going to help make you stronger in that area and protect you against what's going on. So I want to take a second here before I get into identity theft and identity fraud, and I want you to remember a couple things. So the first thing is there's 3 things I really, really want you to remember whenever you're dealing with identity fraud or identity theft. We're going to pause, we're going to verify, and the last one is going to be partner. And you've already taken that first step because you're working with Raymond James, you're working with Randy's group, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we can strengthen that, and then Jason's going to get up here and even tell you what they're doing to even further protect what's going on. There's a lot of ways a cyber criminal, bad actor approaches getting your information. But ultimately, what they're going to do is they're going to get you to give them the information that they need so that they can go after your life savings. I thought about all the different examples that we could pull out for this presentation, but we're only going to use examples from this year because there's that many going on right now. And we're really going to try to make sure that you understand they're going to focus on 2 things to get you to give them the information that they need to get your account information, to get access to your money. They're going to use urgency, and then they're going to pull on your emotion. That's it. They're going to use urgency, and they're going to use emotion, and that's all it's going to take for them to get you to give them their information. You'll hear about there's AI, they do voice cloning, they do video cloning. There's so many cool things out there that they can use to trick you. All true. But it boils down to 2 simple things: urgency and emotion. And we'll talk about the different examples, We'll talk about real-world things that have happened over the past year. One of them is going to involve my wife. I figure I'm far enough away from home that it can't get back to her. If it does, I'm going to deny it, but no matter how much you do to protect it, I want you to understand that these criminals are that good. They're going to figure out a way. And so we also want to talk about the partnering aspect of what happens if you do become a victim. We've given these speeches before, and it is not uncommon to have someone come up or multiple people come up afterwards and actually talk about that they think they're in the middle of being a victim, that they've probably given too much information away, that this actually did happen to them. And so we want to talk about those scenarios, and then we'll talk to you about what to do. So the first thing is, when we talk about identity theft versus identity fraud, this is very important for us to understand the difference. Identity theft is when someone has stolen your information. They haven't yet committed the act of fraud. They haven't maybe made those charges on your credit card yet. They haven't actually gone through and tried to link to your bank accounts, link to your financial institution, to try to actually open up new accounts in your name. We want you to see signs of identity theft and then take action on that. So a lot of us think about when we're a victim of identity theft, if we heard about, we got a notice in the mail, notice in email about you were an AT&T customer or a Verizon customer and there was a breach, or you were a healthcare customer and there was a breach. We immediately look at, okay, we have identity protection, or someone stole my credit card, so I'm going to go ahead and call the bank. We don't necessarily think about contacting our financial advisor. And there's a lot of steps that a financial advisor can take to help protect you when you make them aware that you are a victim of identity theft. So the first thing we want to always make sure of is, if we are a victim of identity theft, whether it's through a breach or maybe we did give someone our information, letting our advisor know they can actually red flag the accounts. They can put special protections on your account to make sure that they stop anyone who tries to take that money away. It's the same thing with your banks. You want to let them know. There's alerts that you can set up that you can partner with them on. And remember, we talked about pause, verify, partner. You can partner with your institutions. You can partner with your banks. They're there to help you, and it'll help you protect that money. So how does this happen? There's a lot of different ways, but these are the 5 most common ways. One is a data breach, and we'll talk about that because it's going to be out of your control, but there's steps that you can take. The next you'll see here is social engineering. We'll give some great examples of how that occurs. But social engineering is going to still go back to the same 2 things we talked about earlier. They're going to go with urgency, and they're going to go with emotion. They're going to get you to give you all the information that they need to take your money. And then we have phishing, fake websites, and actual physical identity theft. And we'll talk a little bit about what do you carry on your regular, what do you carry on you with you travel. We saw some great trips coming up. We'll talk about what do you actually bring on those trips versus what do you bring day to day when you're traveling. So first, let's just talk about the data breaches, because they happen, they hit the news. There's a lot of information about, the massive data breaches that occur, how many victims are impacted. So what does that ultimately mean? A data breach basically is something that's outside of your control. It's typically you did business with a company that has your information for legitimate reasons. So let's just take the Verizon data breach or an AT&T data breach. They have most likely your social security number. They have your phone number for your cell phones. They have your address. They probably have a bank account or credit card on file. And that information gets stolen by a third-party hacker who comes in and decides that they're going to go after this information to see if they can get it, because ultimately they want to use that information against you. They're going to use that information to see if they can go access your accounts, or if they can call you to see if they can get you to give them further information. So most times what I'll tell people here is there's not a whole lot you can do when you're a victim of a breach. You didn't do anything with it. It was a company that you did business with. A lot of people then sit there and maybe they take advantage of the identity protection that's offered usually by the company after something like that. If you don't, you should. But more importantly, you have to think about, did you let your financial institutions know what occurred? And if you didn't, a lot of the times we'll find out that maybe they'll let the bank know. Sometimes we find out that they don't really tell anybody because if it's a false charge on a credit card, it comes back pretty easily. We call them, we tell them we didn't do that, and everything makes sense, and we're good to go. But the criminals are really after your wealth. They are really focusing on everything that you've spent your life building, whether it's your business, all the hard work that you've done to save that money. They are focused on that. That is where they are really, really trying to get to. And so what we want to make sure is that if something like this does happen, that you do let your advisor know. There are steps that they can take to help protect your funds. So we really want you to take an action here and say, okay, let's let the financial institutions know, and let's let the advisor know so that they're aware if anything out of the ordinary is starting to happen on the account, they know now that you were a victim of a data breach. So social engineering. Remember we talked about urgency and emotion. So this is going to distill down to 3 usually common scams that we see. So remember I told you, I'm going to tell you what happened with my wife. You can't really let her know. So I feel I've fallen enough away from where she is right now, so it's not going to get back to her. But I started at American Century here in March of 2022. So first week on the job, I have been at the Bureau for 12 years. I've been in the financial services before that for 8 years. My kids have all been read the Riot Act on how they need to stay safe online. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to my family about the same thing. You need to protect yourself. You need to be very careful. Here's how this is going to work, and this is what you need to do. But the bad guys are that good at what they do. So in June of 2022, we moved. We moved to Florida. So March is when I started. June, we moved. September, I think this occurred. September, my wife gets a call. So I've got 3 kids. They're in high school, middle school age. She gets a call around 3 o'clock. So anyone who's had kids knows that this is right around the prime time that you're picking your kids up and running them to sports. So this is intentional. So she gets a call. It's the sheriff's office in the county that we live in. They verified her name. They let her know the county sheriff's office. They gave a badge number and a name and let her know that she failed to show up to jury duty. So they verified her address. And when I say verified her address, they weren't asking her to confirm. They let her know, hey, this is you. You live at this address. They've got the right county for the sheriff's office. And they're letting her know she failed to show up to jury duty. And they're going to have to come and arrest her in front of her kids. So notice now we've pulled on emotion. We've now told someone who's not thinking about anything other than getting her kids from A to B and picking them up from school that she's about to get arrested in front of her kids. She knows her husband's not home. They don't know that. And she is going to go to jail unless she pays a fine. So right away, she's thinking, okay, well, I'm picking up my kids. I can't pay right now. Can I pay when I get home? They're going to wait on the phone with her. So I'm at work, and I get this message from my son who is saying, hey, mom is on the phone with the police, and she's going to jail. That's the text message I get. Right? So I did a lot of good things on teaching them what to be aware of. Apparently, I didn't teach them etiquette on how to send a message or pick up a phone and call. But so I'm sitting here, and I'm like, let me talk to your mom. She can't get on the phone. She's on the phone with the police. Okay? So I said, what's going on? Dad, she's going to jail because she didn't do something. I said, tell your mom to hang up the phone, right? So pause, verify. So tell your mom to hang up the phone. I can't get her to do it. I can't get my wife to hang up the phone. I can't get my wife to answer my call because the criminal on the other side has told her if she hangs up the phone, there's nothing they can do. The police are coming to the house and they're going to arrest her in front of her kids. And when you tell this story, it seems so obvious. Why would you go to jail for not showing up to jury duty, number one? They're not going to make that go away by having you pay a fine. But in the moment, she's not thinking about that. She's only thinking about, I'm going to jail, I'm getting arrested in front of my kids, and I have to pay this fine right away. And here I am, this savvy, super technical, I'm supposed to know everything about cybersecurity. I've told them everything they need to know, and I can't get her off the phone. Eventually, 45 minutes later, that's how patient the bad guys were, because they were waiting for her to connect our accounts, to pay the fine, and then they would have just liquidated all of our money from that account. So they were willing to wait on there for 45 minutes, and eventually I was able to convince her to hang up the phone. But it took 45 minutes. Not because she didn't believe me, not because of anything other than pure fear that she was going to get arrested if she hung up that phone. That's how good they are. So when we find ourselves to be a victim of something like this, the most common thing that everybody does is they feel ashamed and they don't tell anybody. And that's the absolute worst thing you can do. Because if you don't tell anyone, the more time that passes, the less that we can do to help. And we'll talk a little bit about a few other instances where that happened, and unfortunately there wasn't a good outcome because they waited, and it's a reality of what happens. So let's talk about the next piece here of phishing. So I want you to remember urgency and emotion. And we talked about now, we want to pause, we want to verify, right? And then we want to partner. So phishing comes in many forms. There's emails now. Now they'll do it through text messages, which we call vishing. They'll do it on social media. So there's a thing called a romance scam. And this is someone who is going to cultivate a relationship with you over months. And this is it's such a hard area to touch upon because you're trying to convince somebody who they've never met, but they believe that they've met them, that they're in love with each other, or that there's a special connection with them. They have spent months talking to that person, that they've never met them in real life. And you're trying to tell them that person's not real. They will invest so much time. They will text, they will make phone calls with you, they will send emails, they will be on your social media, they will have social media pictures. And so you sit there and go, that seems so crazy, I definitely won't fall for that. So again, I said I'm only going to use the examples from this past year. So I got a call right before the Christmas holiday. And someone I work with, and they said, do you have a minute? I hate to do this, but it's a personal matter, but it's around cyber. Could I talk to you about it? Absolutely. What's going on? Her mom, was contacted by somebody who they came from the same country. I think. I don't remember what country it was, but they were from the same country originally. Now they live in the U.S., bonded with her right away. They grew up in the same area. They knew some of the same people. They had the same interests and likes. And right away, she was in love. He started off telling her all these great things about, here's what he's into, here's what he's doing. And then he told her he could actually help her invest her money into crypto. So she's not telling her kids any of this is going on. And she goes to the bank, and she tells the bank, and remember we talked about, right? We're going to pause, we're going to verify, and we're going to partner. So the partnering with the bank becomes very critical at this point. So she goes to the bank and she withdraws some money, a large amount of money. And she's going to send it overseas. Now, remember, the person said that they lived in the US. They were going to invest her money into crypto. They were going to show her her returns. And they're really, really good. Urgency and emotion. Need to get this money in now because we're going to make a lot of money in crypto. And emotion, they're in love. So the bank is trying to tell her this money's going overseas. This is not legitimate. Nothing they can do. It's her money, and there's nothing that they can do to convince her that that's not real. That's how good that these scammers are. There's nothing they can do to convince her that it's not real. So she sends the money over. And she gets a link to a website where she's watching now on her phone the crypto money going up in value. She thinks she's a millionaire. She's able to log in every day and see the crypto going up. And so they ask for more money. And I tell you this now because of the partner aspect, this becomes very important. There's a thing called a trusted contact. Your advisors know about it. You probably have a trusted contact with your advisor. If you don't, I would encourage you to talk to them afterwards about making sure that you have your trusted contact with them and that you've introduced them to the trusted contact. Whether that's over the phone or bringing them into the office, it's extremely important. Having the trusted contact becomes so important in so many things that we've seen where people get taken advantage of, and the bank, the financial institution has nobody to contact, nobody to talk to say, I think there's something going on here. So the outcome from this became the lady gave away her entire life savings. So now she has no money. This is not an exaggeration. This is exactly how it happens. And unfortunately, it's too often now. And this is why these things, you can get me out of Florida for this. It's that important because this is something that your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents didn't have to deal with. You are the first generation that has to deal with this. And they are ruthless when it comes to how they're going to approach this. So she gave away her life savings, didn't have anything left, and waited 6 months. So that becomes important. Remember, I talked about if you do find yourself to be a victim of this, to let someone know right away. She let her daughter know 6 months later. So now the call comes to me. We called the FBI, given the amount of money that was involved. And unfortunately, there was nothing we could do. It had taken too long. The money was gone. The money doesn't stay where it was. It moves real quick. And so for Christmas, they were trying to figure out now, how do they sell the home? Where's the mom going to live? She'll probably have to move in with them. And now they're looking at how are they going to balance the family that they have, plus pay for the mom and all of her bills and medical needs and all of that stuff, because there's no more money. It's all gone. And we've seen instances now where they've even taken it steps further. We've seen where they've then, after they've gotten everything from that person, going back to the urgency and emotion, they tell them, well, now you have to pay taxes. And they have them go take out loans. So we've seen examples where they've liquidated the entire life savings, and now that person is hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt because they've taken out loans to pay taxes that aren't even real. We'll give a couple more examples here later on, but this is how they do this. Fake websites. This becomes important when you get asked to click on a link here in the email, or you get asked to click on a text message with a link. Remember we talked about verify? Don't do it. Just go to the website directly. Don't click on the links that come in your email. Don't click on the links that come in your text message. Just go to the website directly. It costs $3 for a bad guy to create a fake website that looks exactly like the real thing. $3. And they can do it within an hour. $3, 1 hour, and I can create a website that looks like the real thing. Last, physical theft. We carry too much information on us a lot of the times. We carry all of our credit cards, we carry our banking account cards, some of us carry our Social Security cards, our Medicare cards. We want to be careful about what we're carrying with us when we're traveling. If you're going on any of these wonderful trips that are overseas, you don't necessarily need to carry your passport plus your ID. So maybe just bring your passport, don't bring your license. If you're traveling out of state, you probably don't need all of the credit cards. You may not need all of your checking cards. Be judicious in what you're traveling with, because all of that, if it's stolen or lost, can be used to create an identity. And it's different ways to prove that they're saying who they are. So be careful about how much you travel with. When I leave the state, I only bring my card that I'm going to be using. I don't bring all of my checking cards. I absolutely do not travel or ever carry my Social Security card on me. That should all be locked up in a safe. And then we want to make sure that if we're using personal documents or anything that's financial and we're throwing it away, that we can shred that information. So how do we protect ourselves? We know now, hopefully, how they're going to come back and get the money and try to get us to give them the money. What are the steps that we can take to protect ourselves? So I really want to focus on two key areas. I want to talk about passwords, and I want to talk about multi-factor authentication, or 2FA, or MFA. So if I told you all that by not having multi-factor, which is the additional 6-digit code that sometimes you'll get texted to yourself, or sometimes they'll ask you to download an app and you'll have a little code there. If you don't put that on your email and your financial accounts, you'd lose $600,000 tonight. All of you would do it. But a lot of the times what we hear back from everyone is, this is a little bit of a pain. I don't like having to do that 6-digit code. I don't always have my phone on me. I got to go back upstairs to get it. So I'd rather just log in with my username and password. So look at the multi-factor piece as putting a deadbolt on your door. I think it's like one of the most common analogies that security professionals use is you have your regular lock and now the multi-factor is the deadbolt. But a bad guy is going to look at it and go, I'm looking for the easiest way to get into people's accounts with the least amount of time invested by me. So a lot of the times when they see that you have multi-factor enabled, they move on. It's not worth their time or their effort to try to get past that. Now, sometimes they'll try, but a lot of the times, and our whole goal is to reduce the amount of risk that we're exposing to ourselves, they're going to move on. And we'll talk about a good example of how sort of multi-factor works and what we can do about that and sort of some instances of what we've seen. The other thing is password managers. So before I came up here, I looked at my password manager. I was curious how many passwords I have. I have 250 different passwords I have to remember. I can't tell you a single one of my passwords. I don't know them. And I don't need to know them. Password managers have become so streamlined now. They become so easy to use. If you have an iPhone, there's actually a passwords app on it now that syncs between your web browsers, your computers, and your iPhone. So a password manager requires you to remember one password, just one. And that's the password to get into the password manager. When you go to your websites and think about all the different websites that you have to log into, you have it for your email, your financial accounts, your utility bills, your cell phone bills, right? Everything. You want to order something online, your Amazon account, all of that requires different usernames and passwords. I can't tell you a single one of my 250 passwords because I only have to remember the one for the password manager. You can pay nothing if you have an iPhone, it's free. You can pay as little as $5 a year for one that syncs across. And then you can share those passwords securely with family members if you need to. So the first step is going to be, we want you to get a password manager. It's become so easy to use, I can't stress enough how important that is. And then you don't have to remember the passwords, and it can be as crazy long as they choose. The password manager will actually decide your password, and they're ridiculously long. They're like 30 characters. But you don't have to remember it. When you go to the website, it fills it in for you. When you pull up the app, it fills it in for you. So we want you to use a password manager. It's not realistic to think that you're going to remember 250 passwords. And what most of us do, and I don't want you to raise your hand, but you probably do it, we use the same username and password everywhere. But the problem with that becomes if they compromise that username and password, if they get a hold of that, now they have access to all of the different things that you shared that username and password with. So, and multi-factor is that last key. So when a cyber criminal gets access to your account, if they were to be able to get into your email account or your financial account, the very first thing that they're going to do is put multi-factor on your account. So think about this. You don't want to do it because it's a little bit of an extra step. Sometimes it's annoying, and I've been there. It is annoying at times. They do it because they know how difficult it is for you now to get back into your account. The hoops that you'll have to go through to get back into an account that has multi-factor turned on gives them enough time to link up their accounts, withdraw your money, and move on. So if the bad guys know how effective it is, that's the first thing they're going to do when they get into your account. They put multi-factor on it because they know it's going to keep you out of your account for that long so that they can do what they need to do. So we want you to put multi-factor on not everything, but emails and financial accounts. Multi-factor. Password managers for everything. You only have to remember one password with the password manager. That's it. So we talked about, remember, social engineering, urgency and emotion. This is what the bad actors, the cyber criminals are going to use. This is how they do it. They go online and they look at what can they find out about you. They research you. Where do you live? Where are you posting your pictures from? Where do you go on vacation? Who are you connected with? Who are your grandkids, your kids, your cousins? They want to know all of that. And remember, I told you, they have no boundaries in terms of how low they will go. So I want to tell another story here of, we had a client who was very active on social media. They posted a lot about what they were doing, where they were going, and they always let all of their so-called friends know what they were up to. So someone had befriended them. It was a cyber criminal, but they didn't know that. Said they knew each other from the high school because the person put their high school on the social media. And fast forward, months later, there's a call at 3 in the morning. So remember, urgency and emotion is what they're going to use, and I want you to pause, verify, and partner. So 3 a.m. in the morning, they get a call. Their grandchild has been critically injured. The grandchild is on vacation in Mexico, I think it was. Critically injured, needs to be life-vac. They need to wire funds immediately. If they don't wire the funds right now, the grandchild's going to die. So you were woken up at 3 in the morning. You were told that your grandchild is going to die unless you wire these funds, that they need to be medevaced, and they knew exactly what it was. So now what I'm going to tell you have to do is going to be the most heart-wrenching thing ever. You have to hang up the phone. Unfortunately, this person did not do that. And how can you, right? They're going to go and expect you to do what you've been taught to do, right? We're going to help immediately however we can. They do not want you making that phone call. They're going to tell you if you hang up the phone, your grandchild's going to die. And you need to hang up the phone. That's the predicament they're going to put you in. 3 in the morning, you're woken up, and they're telling you, you hang up the phone, you killed your grandchild. But that is exactly what they're going to go after. And that is exactly how ruthless they're going to be. And so what we want you to do is think about what you're putting out there. You don't need to post the exact locations of where you're going. You don't need to befriend everybody that says that they knew you if you have no idea who they are. When we sign up for certain things, nowadays you'll see everyone gives you 10% off, 15% off, 20% off on your first order if you sign up here. I'm not telling you not to do that. I do that all the time. But you can go back and delete your account afterwards. There's services out there that help you delete your online presence if you're not using it. But think about if you are using social media, especially if your kids and grandkids are using social media, maybe tell them, think about everything you're posting there. You don't want to be putting all the locations that you go to, when you're out of town, where you visit, who you're with. They will use that against you. Fake websites, this is something that the biggest thing here is, remember we said verify, right? I just want you to go to the website directly. I don't want you to click on the link. They'll send you emails saying, your password needs to be reset. We had a suspicious login, click here. Don't do it. Go directly to the website. Call the phone number back. Or don't call the phone number back. Call the phone number that you can find on the internet that is related to the actual company that you need to call. Don't call the number that they give you. These cyber criminals are so advanced, they want you to act on what you see. So you're going to pause. You're going to verify by going directly to the website, directly to that phone number to call, and you're going to partner with your institutions to make sure that you do that. So to believe it or not to believe it, remember we talked about pause, verify, partner, and they're going to use urgency and emotion. So scams have common themes, right? So there's a problem with your account. You won the lottery, but in the case of my wife, you failed to show up to jury duty, and you're looking at jail time. They can offer you a solution, which usually requires payment. So they're going to go after your emotion, and their urgency is going to be, we're going to offer you a solution. You can make a one-time payment. They're going to have you link an account. You won the lottery, but we need you to connect your account so we can do a small deposit to make sure it works properly, and then all this money is going to come to you. And what they're really going to do is take your money. So every problem has a monetary solution, has a way for them to link up to your information to solve that problem. So remember, if it's a legitimate company, if it's a legitimate issue, there's not going to be an urgency attached to it. They're not going to tell you you need to do something right this second. They're not going to tell you you have to pay a fine right this minute. They're going to allow you to hang up the phone and verify. So pause is your best first line of defense. You're going to pause on what they're telling you. You're going to verify it, not by calling the number back that they give you, not by going to the website that they directed you to. You're going to go back and go to the original websites and the numbers that are posted there. You're not going to go to anywhere that they tell you to go to. So if you do find yourself to be a victim of identity theft and identity fraud, you're going to contact your financial institution. That includes your advisor. You're going to close the fraudulent accounts. Sometimes we ask about credit freezes. A credit freeze is so simple to do now. Unless you are refinancing a home, buying a new home, about to take out a car loan, or getting a new credit card, freezing your credit is super simple to do, and you can unfreeze it now with the click of a button. It protects you to freeze your credit. You can put alerts on it if you want to, which we recommend. Your local police department can help you create identity theft reports. So if something was stolen, anything like that, your local police has a nice template that they can actually help you with. So the whole time we gave this presentation here, and before we bring Jason on, we had 60 more victims of identity theft. That's how often it occurs. So I just want you to remember the pause, verify, and partner pieces. They're going to use urgency and emotion. Their job is always going to be to get you to give them the information they need to take your money. We're going to think first, we're going to pause for a second, we're going to verify, whether that means hanging up, going back to the original website, not clicking on any of the links, and we're going to partner with our institutions because, again, there's a lot your advisors can do to help you out. This becomes so important. So hopefully this was very helpful for you. I really appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand it over to Jason.
Is this thing on yet? You guys hear me? Does anybody need to do a couple up downs or stand up and stretch your legs for a little bit? I know we're a little bit behind schedule at this point, but I have Randy's permission to keep you all here all day if needed. So depending on how this goes, you could be here a while. Brett did a phenomenal job covering a lot of topics. You're going to hear some similar things from me. Where are my slides? Hold on. Here we go. You're going to hear some similar things from me, but obviously with a Raymond James, specific spin. I like these things to be a little bit more interactive. With a group this big, it's pretty tough. But I will offer, if there's a burning question along the way, raise your hand, shout it out. I'll try to respond to it. Otherwise, we'll be around for a couple minutes, after I'm done talking. I won't go into my background. Randy did a good job of introducing me. I've been with Raymond James for about 11 and a half years, but my entire career, including in the military, I've been sort of living and breathing cybersecurity for about 18 to 19 years at this point. Randy stole some of my thunder here. This is, and it's in the handout, by the way, there's some more detailed information about how Raymond James runs our cybersecurity program to protect you in the handout, so you can read through that as well. And there is a copy of this, which is our cyber promise or cyber guarantee, as Randy called it. It is what I consider unique in the industry. There's some other firms that have marketing material that talk about them making their clients whole if they are a victim of some sort of cybersecurity enabled fraud scenario. What's different about this promise at Raymond James is this is an actual documented policy. It is written, it is reviewed every single year by the board of directors of Raymond James Financial and signed by the CEO. So this is not just marketing information, this is legitimate business sponsorship, a cyber promise endorsed by the CEO of the firm. Well, the agenda's blank for some reason, but that's okay, we're gonna go right into it. I'm a little bit, unlike Brett, I'm not going to use an example that includes my wife, because although she is in Tampa, I don't doubt that she has some, ability to ears be ringing if I'm talking about her. But maybe worse, I'm going to use an example that happened to me about 10 months ago that I sort of categorize in the social engineering / Brett mentioned phishing or smishing or vishing, where things are happening over text messages. So I'm going to share an example that happened to me, and I'll give some background. Again, social engineering, you're aware of what that is at this point. There's some more details on the slide. So to start this off, and by the way, these are all real screenshots from my personal cell phone. As I said, I've been involved in this industry, in the financial services industry, and obviously cybersecurity for a long time. Big step in my career about 10 months ago, back in March, I was elected to the first board that I sit on now for a nonprofit called Cyber Risk Institute, or CRI. CRI is really a industry nonprofit where senior technology and security leaders from various firms come together to set and update cybersecurity standards for the firm, right? Really participating to try to make the sector, the financial services sector, more secure as a whole. So I represent Raymond James on that board, and I was elected back in March of 2025. Like most people do in the professional world today, when I was elected, I went to LinkedIn. We talked about, I think Brett mentioned, what you put out on social media is very important. I went to LinkedIn and I updated my profile to say that now I'm a member of the Cyber Risk Institute board representing Raymond James as a Tier 2 financial services organization. That must have been, I don't know, maybe a Tuesday morning. When I got to the office, I logged into LinkedIn, made that update. I was proud of myself. It was cool. I wanted to communicate that to my peers that I'm now participating on this board. The same day, so that Tuesday afternoon, whenever it was that I was driving home in my truck, 4, 5, 6 p.m. at night, whatever it might have been, I get this text message to my personal phone. And it says, Jason, let me know if you're free now, period, Josh Magri. Josh Magri is the CEO of the nonprofit Cyber Risk Institute. So in my head, I know I've communicated with Josh before. He's actually been to the home office, the Raymond James home office down in St. Petersburg, Florida. I know him. I've talked to him on the phone, and I know that I've communicated with him through my Raymond James work email. We've had back and forth emails a number of times. So something, tingling in the back of my head is immediately on alert here, right? I don't know this number. The signature of Josh Magri seems a little odd because we're not that informal, right? I do have some sort of a professional relationship with this person, and you can tell by my response. Now, if I'm talking to somebody that I know and I ask a question like, hey, are you free right now? And they come back with a 2-word response, I am, period. That sounds like you're an asshole, right? And I'm not an asshole. But something in my head was immediately saying something seems off about this initial text message. I'm in a meeting, can't talk now, but excellent with text if that works. I need you on a quick task. Now again, in my head, I'm still somewhat bought into this conversation, which is a little embarrassing for me, and I'll tell you at the end of this, or I guess I can tell you now. I'm not sharing this for you to look up to me as the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Raymond James, the firm that you've entrusted to protect your data and your finances, to say, what is this guy, what is his qualifications? I'm sharing this because if somebody like me, who again sort of lives and breathes these things every single day, can even for a split second, buy into some of these things, and this is a very low-level type of thing, then those of you who aren't thinking and preparing for these types of situations to occur, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage. So that's really the point of sharing this information, and it gets a little bit better here in a second. Now, when this comes in, again, I'd never been on a board before. I'm sort of thinking like, well, does the CEO of a nonprofit task the board members? I don't really work for you, I guess, but now as a board member, maybe that's part of what comes with that. So I say, how can I help? Again, no kidding, I'm still somewhat thinking this might legitimately be Josh Magri, and I'm trying to do what he needs me to do in this new role that I've just accepted as that board member. At this point, they lost me, whoever they might be, but it says, I have a presentation soon. I need some Google certificate back codes. I was hoping you could get some at any store close by. If you haven't, anybody heard of the gift card scams that happen from time to time over the last several years? What this essentially means is they convince you to go in to a store, a Best Buy, a Walmart, and buy a bunch of gift cards, scratch off the back codes, and basically send that information to them so they can then just turn around and use those gift cards wherever they might be valuable at. So at this point, obviously, I'm out of this. However, because for those first 4 text messages or the 2 back and forth, I was somewhat I'm annoyed at this point. I'm pissed off. So I want to keep this going with this individual to do as much as I can to annoy this person now because they unfortunately annoyed me. So we'll keep going here a little bit. Obviously, I was stewing for a little bit and didn't respond. So this person comes back, let me know if you're on this ASAP. I say, yes, what do you need? Can you call me to confirm? I want to get this person on the phone at this point to have and share some choice words with this individual. So I'm just trying to keep it going at this point. Their Google and Apple cards, Target and Staples carries them. Call me. period, right? I'm very, very annoyed, very mad. I want to get this person on the phone and likely, like I said, have some choice words. I'm at the store. How much money do you want on them? Send an image of the values available. I didn't send an image, but I said 100, 500, and 1,000. Oh, but by the way, my business card has a $10,000 limit on it. Send an image of what they have in the store, and this is where now, he lost me after a couple text messages. This is where I lose him. I went to Google on my phone and screenshotted a Google image. You can actually see the shutterstock.com URL at the end. So at that point, there's no more communication back and forth with this person. And again, I only share that because, again, it took a few seconds of that text message back and forth for me to kind of understand what was going on. But even the split second of me not trusting my judgment and saying, no, you know what, I know that's not how he would sign his name on a text message, and I know he's not going to communicate, to me over this phone number that I, for some reason, didn't have saved in my phone. And you can see, again, the pause before you act, which Brett talked a lot about in his conversation, which I probably could have done a better job doing. What I really want to talk about, though, because I think this applies to everybody in this room, especially when you're communicating with, your branch associates or somebody that has anything to do with your sort of financial services, exposure, is verifying through another channel. I get a lot of aha moments when I talk to people about, how do you defend yourself against things like AI and voice cloning and all these things that we're hearing about in the news and in the media. And I ask them, well, have you ever just thought about hanging up the phone and, as Brett said, call back to that person that you think you're talking to on the number that you know to be the good number for that person? Now, if you play that back in the Josh Magri situation, I saw the text message come in. I didn't have it saved, right? That was sort of a red flag for me. All I had to do, right, was go to my work email. I know for sure I've had legitimate email conversation with this person before. They have a signature block. Initiate a phone call to that number, and it's a simple question of, hey, Josh, just to confirm, are you sending me a text message over this number that I don't have saved for you? If so, I want to update my, contact information. And Josh Magri would have said, I have no idea what you're talking about. As a matter of fact, at the time of this, because I did obviously report that to him after the fact, at the time of this, he was actually traveling in Japan. So he was not even in the country when this was going on. So verifying through another channel, when you get a call from somebody, when you get a text message from somebody, maybe it's the IRS, maybe it's the local police department saying you're going to get arrested for not going to jury duty, one of the most effective ways to defend yourself against a potential fraud type scenario, hang up the phone, don't respond to the text message, go to Google, Google the local sheriff's phone number. Google does a very good job of giving you the right information, and you initiate the phone call. I would say anytime you are not initiating the conversation, the communication, that should be a red flag. When you need to be the one initiating the phone calls, you need to be the one initiating the text message, whatever the case is. We tell our branch associates and advisors all the time, and we communicate to clients as well. If you call into a branch and they say, hey, that's great, I'd love to hear from you, I hear you want to move some money, I hear you want to understand this about your portfolio account, let me call back on the number that we have on file for you to continue this conversation. Don't get annoyed when those things happen, right? Those things are happening to ensure that they know exactly who they're talking to, and they're talking to the right person rather than them just answering a phone call into the branch and starting a conversation with somebody that could be not the right person that they should be talking to. Last thing, which again, I feel like I'm repeating some of the things that Brett talked about, which is good, right? We're obviously in tune here. But report anything suspicious. Time is absolutely money in these scenarios. If money leaves an account, the longer it goes without being reported, the less likely we're going to be able to recall those funds. There's a huge process that goes underway, communicating with other financial services institutes and banks to recall funds that went out fraudulently, and that is based on time. The sooner we can respond to those things, the better off we are. On the right side of this is what we communicate to the branches and the financial advisors in terms of how they should be communicating with their clients. So you're actually seeing, no kidding, what we think you should be thinking about as clients, but also what we tell the branch associates and how they should talk to clients as well. If you look at the bottom, report anything suspicious, and it mentions what we call the CTC, or the Cyber Threat Center. I'll talk about that in a couple of slides here. Our Cyber Threat Center is 125, 150 individuals that are, no kidding, hands on keyboard, responding to cyber activity at Raymond James, right? And the branch, in this case, Randy Carver, has 100% access to those capabilities and to those people. We do not know, right, when you might be dealing with something through your personal email or on your personal cell phone. The sooner you communicate that to the branch, the sooner Randy communicates that to our Cyber Threat Center, and then you have the power of a enterprise level incident response and cybersecurity program at your fingertips, helping you through those types of scenarios. So it's all about speed of reporting and communication, so that you ultimately, as a client, are taking advantage of a lot of the things that we're providing from a financial services perspective at Raymond James. Okay. Show of hands, anybody, I know Randy mentioned, if you don't think you're using AI, you are using AI. Most everybody is using AI at this point, whether they know it or not. But show of hands, like, who actually has like ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok that they're using sort of day to day? Okay, a decent number of folks. I built this slide I want to say in January of 2022. If you recall, I think it was November, December timeframe of 2021 when ChatGPT really was first released. And Randy mentioned, I think within a couple of days they were at 1 million users. Obviously now it's crazy how many people are using this stuff. But we, as a cybersecurity organization at Raymond James, obviously AI has been around for a very long time. But that was really the first time that it was becoming readily available in the hands of basically anybody for free, right? And obviously since then it's just sort of exploded in that direction. But we built this slide, we said, okay, well, how is this gonna change how we think about protecting our clients when it comes to threat actors or bad guys or adversaries using and now having direct and easy access to things like ChatGPT? Remember, for many years we had told people, well, when you get an email and it's a bunch of broken English, right, and it's the king of Zimbabwe saying that you've inherited a bunch of money, like, hey, just pay attention to those things and you'll be okay, right? Overnight, that went out the door, right? Because the threat actors can easily use things like ChatGPT to make well-crafted emails, and all that sort of broken English red flags, were gone on day one. So we sat back and we said, okay, well, what are we worried about? What are we thinking about? How is this going to change? Are we going to be dealing with a ton of AI-enabled fraud scenarios now that we've got to help support our clients and get better at a firm at? And guess what? It hasn't really happened. Now, if you look, Randy again said, the media is selling, right? They're salespeople. And so, of course, there are things that you've probably heard in the media about, deep fake technologies and voice clonings and all these types of things that might be happening as it relates to cybersecurity. I will say, generally speaking, we have not seen the use of AI, sort of deep fake voice cloning, to target Raymond James or target our clients in a way that maybe in, again, early 2022, we might have expected to see at this point. And when we reflect on that, there's an obvious reason why, right? The bad guys want to take the path of least resistance. They're lazy. They want to be the most efficient that they can. And if all the same things that have worked for many years continue to work, meaning I can just send a text message to the deputy CISO of Raymond James and he'll go buy me gift cards, if those things continue to work, they don't need to start spending money and figuring out how to incorporate deepfake technologies into what they're doing. So it really comes down to, as long as we as a collective society, when it comes to cybersecurity, are not following the basic principles of cyber hygiene day in and day out, the adversary has no need to go back to the drawing board in terms of what they're trying to do. So not to say AI is not important. We're using AI to help us perform our cybersecurity program. The adversaries, of course, are using AI to get more efficient and to get faster and better. But generally speaking, it was not the game changer in terms of what we are seeing as a firm and what our clients are experiencing when it comes to cybersecurity attacks or identity theft or fraud types of things. Again, that could change over time, but not something that we've seen turn into what we might have expected several years ago at this point. Now, That said, there are some things that we have done as a firm and we're continuing to do to better prepare for when and if that activity starts to ramp up. I'll talk about two of them. One really applies to us as employees, and remember it's a large firm, which means we can spend, I think in fiscal year 26, we're going to spend about $100 million on cybersecurity. We have 250 total cybersecurity professionals that are global at this point, so we have actual cybersecurity professionals sitting in Vancouver as well as London, although the majority of them are sitting down in St. Pete, which is where we're headquartered. So what we've implemented is when an employee calls into Raymond James to do some sort of activity, we're now doing visual identification. If I say the name scattered spider, does anybody know, show of hands, anybody heard the term scattered spider before? Okay, let me tell you about scattered spider very quickly. I'm probably already over time, but I'm going to keep going. MGM Grand and Caesars casino attacks. Everybody remember hearing about that from a couple of years ago? Okay, MGM Grand specifically, obviously a casino out of Las Vegas, they were completely taken off the map for about 2 weeks. So if there was a customer that had a room key and went to badge into their room, they were unable to get into that room. They were attacked by a cyber criminal called Scattered Spider, and Scattered Spider, the way that they got into the MGM Grand's technology environment was they made a phone call to the help desk. So the same number that an actual MGM Grand casino employee might call, somebody from Scattered Spider made a phone call into that help desk or that person. What was unique, or what is unique about Scattered Spider, by the way, is they are almost entirely native English speakers. So again, some of the things that we've historically been able to rely on, we know a lot of these cyber criminals are based out of Eastern Europe, maybe based in Asian countries. That was completely out of the door. I've actually heard recordings from those phone calls to MGM Grand, and the guy sounds like he's from Southern Georgia. So very difficult for those individuals to identify maybe when a fraudulent caller is calling in. All of that led to about $100 million in revenue losses for MGM Grand over that 2-week period. They actually formally reported that through their SEC filing. What we've done, right, to ensure that we're prepared for those things, and we were ahead of the curve here, is when you call a help desk at Raymond James as an employee, you're actually required to do a visual identification. So think about if anybody's traveled recently, when you go to the airport now, and you go in through TSA pre or whatever, you put your ID in that little slot, it takes a picture of you, and on the back end, really using some AI capabilities as well, it's doing a verification to say, yes, the person standing in the front of this camera, in our case, the person calling into our help desk, they actually have to take a picture of themselves. They submit it through our system. It evaluates that person against the ID and says whether that's actually the person that's calling in to the help desk or not. So again, a lot of those things are instrumental in preparing for things like this when they start to happen, if they start to happen more often as AI continues to sort of proliferate in the world that we're living in today. The second thing, which really has an impact on clients, and that's coming this year, is what we call Amelia voice authentication. So we have a client services desk today. So if you're a client access user, for example, show of hands, client access users, active client access users. Okay, maybe about half. You have the availability to call into our client services desk if you need to reset your password or something like that. We're going to have voice recognition software in those call centers so that, again, if you're a client, you call into a client services desk and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I need to change my password. We'll have the capability on the back end to recognize and evaluate your voice based on your opt-in, and voice recording from a previous time, that we can say, yes, this is the right caller, and that is the voice of the individual that I expect it to be. That will then be applied to branch personnel, right? So when you call into Randy Carver's branch, his team will have the ability to say, yes, this is the right voice that matches the client that I'm talking to today. Just another way to verify, authenticity of callers in today's world where things like deepfake technology and voice cloning are sort of on the precipice at this point. Okay, Brett talked about credit freeze. This is not a test. You can actually scan these QR codes. It'll take you directly to the link for each of the 4 major credit reporting bureaus to freeze your credit. Again, as Brett said, unless you're planning to take out a new line of credit or do a refi or something like that, it's a really good baseline way to keep your identity protected. Again, thinking about the outcome of some of these deep fake or voice calling technologies. They're trying to do things like open a new line of credit. So that's a good way to, again, protect yourself and pretty easy to do at this point. Okay, I've talked a little bit about some scenarios. I want to talk, Brett did a very good job, as I said, of covering kind of what the threat actors are doing today. I want to give you some comfort about what Raymond James is doing to protect you as our clients. As I said, we spend about $100 million on cybersecurity every single year, and we actually do some peer benchmarking based on our spend and the size of our firm. So typically speaking in financial services, the big organizations, you think of organizations like JP Chase, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, they're spending about 10% of their technology budget on cybersecurity, right? So that's kind of the baseline industry expectation. At Raymond James, we spend about 13%. So 13% of our technology budget is focused purely on cybersecurity, and that's a reflection of going back to what I said about our cyber promise, right? This is board level information and awareness around cybersecurity, and we want to be sort of leading the pack in terms of how much we're prioritizing cybersecurity. And an easy way to do that is say, we're actually going to spend a higher percentage of our technology budget purely focused on protecting our clients through our cybersecurity program and budget. It's pretty simple strategy: protect, detect, develop, and partner. Our CIO, our Chief Information Officer at the firm, actually was hired as the Chief Information Security Officer of the firm about 13 years ago. He's a former Marine intelligence officer. Marines like to keep things very simple. And he put this strategy in place with the backdrop of, we've talked about this already a little bit, right? The adversary, the bad guys, are going to take the path of least resistance. When you go out and do research or read some of these articles about, what happened in some of these significant breaches, a very high % of the time, it is a failure of a very basic cybersecurity control, right? It is somebody didn't do something that they were supposed to do that everybody thought that this person was doing. The adversary found that weakness, found that gap, and took advantage of it. Very rarely is it, wow, this super ultra sophisticated cyber actor just completely demolished this organization and went above and beyond, and we'd never seen this type of stuff before. That really never happens. It is, that firm was not doing the blocking and tackling of their cybersecurity program, and as we know, the bad guys are looking for things all the time. They identified that opportunity and took advantage of it. So that really plays into our cybersecurity strategy, where we want to keep it simple, and we want to focus on day in and day out executing flawlessly, meaning the baseline information security and cybersecurity practices are done flawlessly every single day, because we know, based on historical breach information, in our industry, when something bad happens, it's because somebody failed at something very basic in the program. So protect is really building the castle, right? We want to keep the bad guy out. We've got a lot of technology. If you read through our pamphlet, there's some key technologies that we talk about there that's really intended to keep the bad guy out of Raymond James. Detect, which is really probably the name of the game of the last decade or so, is when and if something bad happens, which we like to assume something is going to happen at some point, how good are you at identifying that activity and ultimately keeping bad things from actually happening to you as an organization, right? In today's world, if you are in another meeting similar to this and you're hearing from a CISO from JP Chase or some other financial services firm, and they say, we never have anything bad happen to us from a cybersecurity perspective, they are lying to you, right? That is just not reality today. And that is why the detect column, which is where our cyber threat center sits, I'll show a slide here in a second, that is critical to our cybersecurity program. We want to be constantly looking and identifying when and if there are bad things happening inside our environment. We also have, under that detect program, what we call our assurance testing program. So not only are we expecting bad things to happen or attempt to happen from true threat actors and adversaries, we actually pay companies, and we pay a lot of money. It's a lucrative business for these individuals. We pay people to come try to break into Raymond James. So we spend about $2 million a year paying consultants to, hey, see if you can hack into Raymond James, and then tell us what we can do better in order to keep that from happening. Now, I will say we make it very, very difficult for these consultants. So a lot of times we're paying a lot of money just for them to come in for 3 weeks and say, yeah, we weren't really able to do anything. However, they're along the way identifying opportunities for us to continue to get better at our cybersecurity program and execution. But long way of saying we spend a lot of money and focus on the detect column here. Develop, obviously, we spend a lot of time and money developing our cybersecurity associates, right? We want the best and brightest. We spend a lot of time recruiting. Our individual that runs our cyber threat center, who is a peer of mine, came to Raymond James, I think, a month after I did, but from certain 3-letter agencies that he doesn't like me to talk about. It's the NSA. And he has really shaped that organization into almost like a military unit, right? And there's a lot of former military folks. Obviously, I'm an example of that. But NSA folks, military people, obviously being in St. Pete, Tampa, Florida, we have access to MacDill Air Force Base where things like CENTCOM sit. And so we get a lot of talent that are separating from the military. Hey, you want to come over to Raymond James, you can stay in beautiful Tampa, St. Pete, and come help us run our program to protect our clients. So we spend a lot of time developing, recruiting talent. And then partner, I think, is one of the more important pillars as well, which is we want to partner with organizations outside of Raymond James. It's always interesting for clients to hear on the business side, right, we are competing with other firms in our industry, like the Wells Fargo and the Morgan Stanley. We want the best advisors to be affiliated with Raymond James. On the cybersecurity side, we're really partnered with them, right? We have active chat sessions, no kidding, chatting back and forth with our peer cybersecurity teams at JP Chase, at Wells Fargo, at Morgan Stanley. All the firms in our industry are sharing information back and forth. The way that benefits Raymond James uniquely as compared to firms like JP Chase, oftentimes what happens in our world is the adversary will go after named commodities first, right? They'll go after JP Chase just because they know who they are and they're a big organization. And so JP Chase might see some sort of activity from a cyber threat actor before Raymond James ever sees that same activity, right? So we're actually hearing from some of the larger firms in our organization what they might be seeing that we can then have some time to prepare for if and when we see that same type of shift in tactics that JP Chase might be experiencing before Raymond James. So partner is huge. We spend a lot of time with government organizations. We actually had the head of FBI Cyber in St. Pete at the Raymond James headquarters last year. We have the local FBI cyber guy in the office, usually quarterly, and again, information sharing. We partner with them to understand what they know about what the threat actors are trying to do. So again, we can feed that into our program and make sure that we're keeping pace and staying ahead of the adversary. This is really highlighting the protect pillar of our strategy. We want a defense in depth way of executing our program. So think about it as if one control fails, which I've already mentioned a few times now, something bad is going to happen. That's how we operate. That's our assumption. We never want the failure of one thing, whether that's a person who made a mistake, they clicked on something they shouldn't have clicked on, whether it's a failure of a technology. We know technology fails. We never want that to result in the equivalent of an unlocked front door into Raymond James. So we have secondary, tertiary, oftentimes fourth level of controls that really then enable us to, again, back to the second pillar, detect when those things might be happening and respond in a way that contains any sort of impact to Raymond James or ultimately to our clients. Now these companies that are listed on the left and the right of the slide, they are some of our core providers that help us run or execute our cybersecurity program. I wouldn't say they're stock picks, although I think a lot of them have done pretty well over the last decade or so. But again, just showing we partner with obviously the tried and true providers in the cybersecurity space. You think of things like Microsoft and Palo Alto Networks. By the way, Raymond James actually took Palo Alto Networks public back in, I think, 2011. What's great about that, by the way, and they are very important to our cybersecurity program, I have the personal cell phone number of the Palo Alto Networks CEO in my phone. So you really want that relationship with some of your providers, because if we need something from them that might be unique to Raymond James, if we need them to focus on developing something for us individually, we 100% have that access. Now, maybe not as much with things like Microsoft, but there are a number of those that we're doing active engagement with these suppliers, to where I would say we punch above our weight class as a financial services firm, where we can influence some of the priorities of some of these big players in the cybersecurity space. Okay, an example of that defense in depth. We haven't actually, I don't know that Brett or I have mentioned email. Maybe we did at one point, but email today is still the #1 attack vector that the threat actor uses, right? They know in today's world there's billions and billions of emails flying around basically every day. That is the #1 way that they're still trying to get that initial foothold, or get that initial access, or get you hooked onto some sort of back and forth conversation, is through email. In a given quarter, so this is over a 3-month period at Raymond James, we have about 178 million emails that are inbound to a Raymond James email address. So that would include randy.carver@raymondjames.com, or whatever, jason.mayor@raymondjames.com. After all of our layered security, right, we have several tools that are looking at and evaluating emails that are coming into our firm. You can start to see some of the numbers that ultimately result in about 46 to 48% of all email traffic, at least by our tools, are categorized as malicious or fraud in nature. So almost half of all the emails that are flying around the world, if you sort of assume similar numbers everywhere else, about half of all the emails that are going out in the world are fraudulent or some sort of malicious intent behind them. So that just kind of tells you the scale of things that you should be thinking about. And keep in mind, we spend a lot of money on securing our email platform. You on your personal Gmail account, or on your Yahoo account, or God forbid, your AOL account. Anybody want to? No? Okay. We got a couple AOL accounts. You're not getting the same level of enterprise security, on your personal emails. Right now, Google does a decent job of trying to help you as a client of theirs, protect yourself through email. But going into your inbox, you should make the assumption that half of what I see that's landing in this inbox might be malicious in nature, right? And your guard should be up when you're interacting with email. Again, I have an email come in from the IRS, and they're telling me I have to make a payment. First of all, you should know that's never really going to happen, right? You can't get in touch with the IRS, no matter how you try to contact them. They're not going to email you, that you have to pay something. But if for whatever reason you're like, you know what, I need to follow through on this to kind of give myself that comfort, initiate a phone call to the IRS, sit on hold for 3 hours if that's what you want to do, and then ask them, hey, did you send me an email, saying I owe, back taxes? They're going to say absolutely not. We would never do that. But again, just driving home, layered defense that we're applying at the enterprise level, and how much bad stuff is happening and going over email in today's world. I mentioned our Cyber Threat Center. We actually do, by the way, if you ever do a visit down to St. Pete, to the headquarters of Raymond James, we actually take clients through our Cyber Threat Center every week. So you can actually go and walk through our Cyber Threat Center and hear from some of the folks like Nate Tooting, who leads our Cyber Threat Center. As I said, he was doing some very cool things with the NSA, kind of nation state level stuff, and he shares some of those stories, but more importantly kind of shows you the back end of what we're doing to help protect you and respond to things as we're monitoring the Raymond James environment. As I said, we are a global organization, so majority of folks sit in St. Pete, but we do have 24/7, 365 coverage. So every single minute of every single day, there is a Raymond James employee with hands on keyboard monitoring the environment and responding to things as they're occurring. So that's through, as I said, St. Pete, Vancouver, and London as well. Really cool organization, by the way. I've been talking to clients now for, I guess, 11 years, basically since I started at Raymond James. So I was much younger, when I started doing this initially, and I used to say, when I go into the cyber threat center, I feel like an old person. I am getting older now, but because a lot of these individuals, no kidding, are 23, 24, 25 years old, but they are the type of people that have been doing this type of stuff since they were like 12, right? So it's very, very cool to see. As a former Air Force officer, I really consider those folks the sort of the fighter pilots of Raymond James Cybersecurity. They're doing the cool stuff. We have a group embedded in that team called our Cyber Threat Intel group, which, if you look at other firms, not only at our peer level, but even the biggest in the organization, they're not doing a lot of the things that we're doing in our cyber threat intel group at Raymond James, which really says a lot about our prioritization of the cybersecurity program in general. But that team, what they do day in and day out is they try to interact with the adversaries, right? Almost kind of, I was doing the poor man's version of that through my text message back and forth, but no kidding, these individuals are almost playing the part of the victim, right? And they're engaged with these threat actors because what they do is they learn as much about what they want, what the threat actor is trying to do. They want to get as much information about them because guess what? They turn around, they package that information and they give it to the FBI, right? Then the FBI can prioritize what they do, to ultimately try to take down some of these criminal organizations. So we're not stopping at, we're going to just keep the bad guy from impacting our firm or our clients, right? We are going to that next level to say, how can we help the broader financial sector by giving information about these threat actors that we're learning to organizations like the FBI. Really cool environment. Again, if you ever do a client visit, make sure you go see the Cyber Threat Center. It's a really impressive organization. Okay, personal protective measures. We've talked about most of these. If you want to snap a picture of this slide, by all means, I'll maybe move out of the way a little bit. I've highlighted and read some things that I think are more important. I won't touch more on two-factor authentication. Brett did a good job of that. Turn it on, right? Even if your password gets compromised, if you have things like multi-factor authentication enabled, it's going to give you time to respond to those alerts, change your password, do all those types of things. Email, treat it with caution, assume half of everything that's landing in your inbox is malicious or fraudulent in nature and act accordingly to those things. Downloading from unprotected or unknown websites, again, as Brett said, it's very easy to create websites. These things are happening all the time. Just be aware of what you're clicking on. Anything that pops up and says, hey, are you allowing this thing to be downloaded to your computer? Just select no, right? I would rather you select no and deal with, maybe that was a legitimate thing than the opposite, which we see oftentimes, which is you're allowing something bad to ultimately be downloaded, onto your computer. What's not on here, but again, I will reiterate, verifying out of band who it is that you're communicating with is extremely important in today's world, and it's not going anywhere. It's almost like we're going back 30 years now, where telephone calls, right? I understand, yes, voice cloning and deepfake technology, could be coming more than where it is today. But right now, picking up the phone, you initiating the phone call to who it is that you think you're supposed to be talking to through a known good source is going to address a ton of these scenarios, right? The threat actors, and I know Randy's ready to step back up here. Right? The threat actors, they want to follow their same process. Oftentimes, no kidding, these have been published. They have a script, right, that they want to follow word by word to make their likelihood of success higher. When you do things like, I'm going to hang up this phone and I'm going to call back, on the known good number, they're gone. They move on, right? That you are now a hard target, you're not a soft target anymore, and you're not worth their effort. They're going to go to the next person that's not doing a lot of these baseline things to protect themselves, and they're going to be successful with them, right? So make yourself a little bit harder of a target by doing some of these things, and it's going to go a long way in protecting yourself. And no, obviously on the back end, Raymond James is doing a ton, to protect you through our firm. Contact your branch, communicate with them because they have access to everything that I just talked about on the back end, and we're here to help. Thank you.
Just want to thank everybody for coming out. If you do have questions, reach out. I don't know if you saw the statistic, how many incidents a minute to, what is it, 50
billion events a second.
50 billion events a second is what they're blocking. So a lot going on. Again, we thank you for coming. If you think of questions, just reach out to any of our team. Have a great weekend.